Hi guys. Excuse the clothes. After work afternoon. I'm just home and I'm just starting to use this Annealing Made Perfect machine here. I just wanted to bring it to you what we're up to, because it's something that we're going to be testing over this season at least. It may be something that becomes one of the regular parts of my stable, but I want to go through and test it. These are an induction annealer, so they use an electromagnetic field to create heat in a very controlled fashion. They have a whole program side of things, and I won't get too technical about that. The guys themselves in their Annealing Made Perfect have a big website with lots of information. Really scientific guys, getting right into the geek side of it in the way of going through and analysing things really thoroughly. I think these guys were in more of the scientific world and doing stuff with metals. I'm not sure exactly what they're up to, but they've used their that science side of things with good computer programming and the ability to program different timing in there, with a whole heap of different pilots and bits and pieces that do the job really thoroughly. So for the first time, and I suppose that's what I would say, for the first time that I've had the chance to use a system that is really going to give us a proper control over annealing. Previously I've used it in various forms with varying success, and it's one of the things that I came to the way I do my loading is I deleted that from it. I run brass until I have issues with the brass, and I tend to change the brass. And I certainly did lots of things to make the brass last longer, and in some places I suppose I still feel that annealing is not going to give me any benefits. But there are other places where I have some issues, where I find some stuff that it gets to a point where the brass starts to get what I believe is too rigid. I start to get a tight bolt lift with doing exactly the same resizing processes, and 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 firings into it, I start to get a tight bolt lift. I'm fairly certain that I'm getting to where the brass is starting to get stronger out on the shoulder, and it's not bouncing back enough, or it's not settling back after the explosion, and that's what's giving my tight bolt lift. Might not be the case, there might be other things going on. There is always bits and pieces. I find that the goalposts are always moving in loading side of things. What you think is exactly the right thing and might work fine for a couple of seasons, I find tends to move, and whether that's powder changing or there's something else and the dynamics changing. One of those things, I found that at one stage there I was cleaning my brass too thoroughly, getting it too polished, getting too smoother wall surface on the brass, which means it wasn't gripping properly to the chamber. In other places I found my chamber starts to polish, and using some stuff to rough that up so it would grip again. There's all sorts of other details, but one of the ones I'm pretty certain of is that actually annealing and getting that brass back to where it is not as rigid, or it's not as springy, and get it back to where it's softer again, I think will give me some advantages. Like I said previously, I've sort of tried that, had varying, basically too much inconsistency in it. In this little setup what they've got here, I really can go through and I still have to work out exactly what I'm doing in the rest of my loading, but this I think will give me that extra little edge to get those ones under control as well. What I'm doing at the moment is the 6.5 sawn, and I'm doing it in my base startup. I'm doing it as brass just fired. I'm not tumbling it, I'm not doing anything whatsoever. I'm doing the basic wipe down clean, make sure there's no foreign matter in it. I'm doing my annealing, and then I'll do my resizing and see how we go. That may end up where we do the full tumble and go through the process and end up really shiny brass that we're annealing. There's different processes of what I'm going to work out what works for me, like I always do. But I should say on that sort of stuff, some of the guys who are using these machines or doing good annealing talk about doing annealing every time. So they anneal every time they load. Listen, there may be benefit there. I'm off the top of my head, I'm not planning on going there. I'm planning on going when I feel I need it, and maybe that's every 2 or 3 times. But listen, they might be right. That may be a case of the best way to do it, being such a simple process, is anneal it, go through all the rest of your prep and things afterwards, and keep it at that level. And that's really going on about what your the neck tension is and keeping that brass working exactly the same way all the time. And I might find that it is where I can do the 2 or 3 and then go through and do the annealing. I don't know, I'm not going to make any promises as yet. I'm not making any foregone conclusions as yet. I'm going to go through this process. Even like I said, the way I actually do it to start off with, I'm starting off in this place, so just as one extra in my normal loading process, and I will have to go through and do the whole thing, see what differences, see what consistency, see what extreme spreads I'm talking about and that sort of stuff. Largely I'm a long range group guy, and largely I want the rifle to work properly. I want bolt to lift nicely, I want it to load nicely, I want it to group well, what I normally focus on, but we'll go through the whole gamut of tests and see how we go. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring it to you. This machine isn't mine yet. I'm using it for a while. The guys over at BRT in Australia have sent one over for me to go through and test. That is the fact that I can actually show you what's going on. And listen, I'm really thinking it's probably going to be something that we own by the end of the year, but I just thought I'd bring it to you, just let you know. Later on we'll have more information on it. Yeah, and thank you, Stuart, once again, for Stuart and these guys for letting us have a play with this little thing and see how it goes, and we'll bring that info to you. Anyway guys, midweek, like I said, still in the work clothes, just thought I'd bring it to you. I'll get back to work and finish getting this brass ready to go bang again.